To Sales Chatter Data Day Wednesday with the mastermind, the mad scientist of data, Dean Crook. As you can see, we're missing Smiley McGee, DJ here today. DJ had an appointment and is unable to make it. And you know what? It's actually, when you think about it, Dean, gosh, we're talking close to like 8 months, never missing an episode. So it's pretty down and good there. So today, Data Day Wednesday, we are going to talk about where in the market is imploding on itself, but where also in the market is it exploding. Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly. And Lisa remains champ this morning with the first good morning. And you know what? I just realized we're missing half our streams this morning with DJ being gone because he can't pair with his channels to stream. So I hope everybody finds lonely old me on the old LinkedIn's and the Facebooks. And
Lisa beat me to it.
Nice to meet you last week at the TIA. You know what? Chad and Lisa were sending pictures. I was like, oh my gosh, you got to meet Dean. He is awesome. Yeah.
That was amazing, Dan. I met so many people that are part of your program at TIA. Lisa, I think Lisa came up and her husband, I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was. I hope it was.
Yeah, Chad. Yeah.
Chad, that's right. And we had a wonderful conversation, but I was kind of blown away by the fact that, it's 6 a.m. on the West Coast where Lisa is. So you've got people all over the country dialing in at 9 a.m. Eastern, listening to us chat, and it kind of gets them off to the right start for the day.
Yes. And you know, what's been amazing is I've actually had people in Nigeria DM me and say, oh my gosh, I love your show. And I think it's like 3 a.m. there. So people are actually getting up at 3 a.m. to watch the show. And it was, it's amazing because we have all these amazing people like Antoine, like Lisa, like Jeff, like everyone that says hello. Yeah. But in the background, the amount of people that don't, I mean, I have customers that I would work with. I have colleagues I used to work with where when we happen to connect, they're like, dude, I listen to your show every morning on my way to work. I'm like, well, why don't you say anything? Like, well, I'm driving, so I can't comment, but I listen to your show every day. I'm like, don't do that because then, now I'm responsible. But it's amazing. And it's so, Dean, we've said this, I think probably a couple of weeks ago, doing this brings so much joy. You'd almost do it for free. I mean, you got to pay bills and stuff, but it's like, I know you would sift through data and figure things out, even if you didn't get paid for it, because it's a passion of yours. And to have people come back, we've had students come back from the program and say, I've had this and this happen in my life. And we've realized we can't have kids. And because of you and because of your training, because of the direction you give me, I can now afford the programs to have a child. Or I've had students come back and say, I just got to tell you, I landed this new customer. And then when I went home, my wife said to me that she's so proud of me. And Dan, that is worth more than any commission. That's the biggest commission you can get. And these stories and these testimonials of what we do are gold. I mean, I've shared a couple with you where I've said, hey, Dean, do you have any data on this? You've taken the data, we've given it to students, and the students said, because of that data, because of what you did and Dean did, and how Dean interpreted the data, I was able to close the biggest account of my life. Like that matters. That matters in every which way, shape, and form. And it's just, it's so fulfilling to see people's successes. When I was doing sales training at a company, when salespeople come in and say, I bought my first brand new car, I'd be like, come on, man, show me. And to see that excitement on their face because they can finally afford a new car. Or I remember one guy came in, he says, you won't believe this. With my commission checks, because of your help, I've paid off my student debt in 3 years. Wow. And I'm awesome. It was just those are what really bring it in. Bring it in. Jeff says, good morning, Dean. The meme Dean data machine. I like it. We have a lot of nicknames for you, Dean. I hope you enjoy
today
them.
I'm the guest DJ in for DJ. So
exactly. So Dean, share with us, what are we talking about today? What are some of the OMG markets? And let's dive into it, my man.
It's like OMG across the entire country, with the exception of a few at the moment. Rates continue to slide. That's the big story. I saw a TikTok post from a lady trucker last night, and she was saying, why are rates falling? She doesn't understand why rates are falling. Diesel's going up, rates are falling. And of course, this is sort of classic supply and demand dynamics. This is a free market. It's a deregulated market. This is what happens. Rates have been going up for 18 months. Now they're coming down, and they'll go back up again, and they'll come back down.
Dean, can I stop you there for a second? Can
Yep.
you please explain, because some people might not fully understand what a regulated and deregulated markets are. Can you explain the difference between the two? Because I know right when I got into brokering, it was just after deregulation, which caused a huge stir in things happening. But can you just share that with everybody so everybody's fully aware of what that is?
I mean, I'm not an expert on this, and of course I wasn't in this country when the ICC, the Interstate Commerce Commission, was in control of rates. But I think, was it 87?
Yes.
The dates escape me, but deregulation happened in the late 80s. And up until that point, though, carriers had to apply to operate for a license on a particular lane, and rates were approved by the Interstate Commerce Commission. So you couldn't just go anywhere. It wasn't like you could run 48 states. You only had your particular patch of the world to run your trucks back and forward, and everything was sort of dedicated, and you had fixed rates on those lanes, although they were adjusted. So that's sort of generally the concept. But after deregulation, suddenly, and this is how the 3PL broker world came about, right, in the deregulated world, because suddenly there was all this capacity in the market that shippers and brokers and carriers
could utilize.
So everybody had to connect. This is essentially how DAT came about, because we provided this network as a service for carriers, brokers, and shippers to connect in this post deregulated market, where you could go anywhere and charge whatever sort of rate you wanted. So that was sort of the rates went away from being fixed to being whatever the market forces would dictate. And right now, Dan, rates are down another 5 cents per mile this week, as of this morning. So when I look at our DAT's 3-day rates for loads picked up this week that have already been moved, rates are down another 5 cents a mile. I'm just looking at it now. They're averaging $2.23 per mile. That's down 55 cents a mile since the start of the year, down 20 cents in the last month. Diesel is still at $5.07. So diesel costs
are still way higher.
Yeah, diesel's still way higher at $5.07 as of Tuesday evening. So the fuel surcharge is about 61 cents, 60.07 cents this week. It went down about 1.1 cents this week, because it came down from, diesel prices came down from 5.15 to about 5.07. So they did drop. That's the 4th week in a row diesel prices are dropping. So remember, diesel prices are very slow to come back down because of all the market volatility that's still going on. But that carrier, that was, I'm just trying to look here. If I looked at a load, I'm down. If I'm hauling a load of freight on a 1,000-mile haul this time before the Ukraine invasion, I'm down about $500 in terms of.
I just figured it out at 55 cents a mile. If you're doing a 1,500-mile run, you're down $825 for every 15-mile run. So let's even say, on a low end, it's 3,000 miles a week. You're out $1,650 a week right now. With rates are. Fuel is not down $1,650 a week.
Correct.
Nothing's down $1,600. So you're talking $1,650, and even go 4.2 for whatever your average weeks. You're talking $6,930 a month.
Right.
If this continues, that's close to $83,000. That's just over $83,000 bottom line if everything stayed the same compared to what it would be from January. 83 G's. That's a lot. So one truck. Truck.
So this is sort of. There's lots of stories around about carriers sort of, undercutting each other and taking lower rates. That's what a free market does, right? You've got different operating costs. I will say that contract rates, though, are still sort of plateauing. So contract rates on the other side, there's a delta of about, I think it's about 20 cents a mile this week. If I have a quick look at our rate view product at national rates, what I'll see is that contract rates on the van side are currently sitting at about 327, including fuel. On the spot side, they're sitting at 386. So 286. So spot rates are under contract by, what's that, 327
It's
minus
286,
286.
so
Yeah.
40 cents, somewhere
Yeah.
in that
So,
area, 40 cents.
so
So, and here's the thing. We're already seeing it. I shared a story with you just before we went on air about some customers of mine that
right.
that are in the Inception program, where we have some pretty in-depth talks, where they're seeing massive decreases in business because of
Yep.
the spot market. And
Right.
we were talking off air just before we went live about the fact that shippers are going to want to kind of get some of that money back.
Absolutely.
And I know you said there's interesting things to come. What are those
Mhm.
things to come, and what can we deliver to the audience today to
Yeah.
kind of, as much as possible, stay ahead of this, the
Yeah.
conversations, and then we'll kind of dive
Yeah.
into the conversations they should be having
Yeah.
with customers right now.
Well, when I was talking to Lisa and her husband Chad at San Diego and at TIA, Chad asked the question, and a genuine question: why should we care about carrier operating costs? Like I'm paraphrasing, but something along
Mm-hmm.
those lines. Why is it important? Well, somebody moves the freight at some point, and it's mostly a truck, right? In our business, right? So the freight's got to move on a truck. So right now, if you're a shipper that's going to dive into the spot market because rates are lower, and that's of course what happens in every market cycle, eventually it becomes a race to the bottom for those carriers that work in the spot market because they've got to pay their fuel bills at the end of the month, and right now those fuel bills are very, very high.
Mm-hmm.
So their profitability's gone from 55 cents a mile a year ago to just 5 cents a mile today. So their profitability, so the capacity that you're using, the small carrier, their profitability has dropped 90% in the last 6 weeks. Now, at some point, but the context is that rates are still historically high. So when you get down to 5 cents a mile and you get down to sort of break even, carriers have a decision to make. You've got to then start cutting costs. You've got to be more selective about loads. Unfortunately, there'll be a part of the market that just keeps driving the rates down, and you end up with what we saw in May 2020 with protests in front of the US Capitol because there was they were claiming no transparency on the broker market and freight rates were unsustainable. Well, that's what a free market does. And I remember that at the time, even DAT got the blame for the rates being low. But I had to remind people we don't own trucks and we don't haul freight.
How did you get blamed for the rates? Because you have a matching service?
Well, everybody looks to blame someone else for what's going on in the market. And unfortunately, some people thought that we were setting the rates. The reality is that the rates that we're talking about today are rates that have been agreed to by carriers to haul freight. It's based on a negotiation. And unfortunately, what will happen is that some shippers will play the market and drive the market down, drive capacity out of the industry. And then guess what will happen? Capacity will tighten and rates will come back up again, and then it'll be hard to find trucks again. So I think this gets to the heart of your program, right? This is about building relationships with your customers. And we've already talked about on the show about working with shippers that have good memories. Because if you're a shipper that doesn't have a good memory, you will play the spot market and drive the market down and then wonder why you can't find trucks. Because Dan, and this applies to brokers as well, right? That are some of them that we talked about last week that weren't treating their carriers with the utmost respect. You'll be on the what list pretty quickly,
Yeah.
right? And it's the do not call list. You don't want to be on that list if you're a shipper, and you don't want to be on that list if you're a broker, and certainly you don't want to be on that list if you're a carrier. So this applies to everybody in the transaction. But right now we're witnessing something historic. Right, so this is an amazing unwinding of capacity in the market. You remember on the show, I've been saying for at least 6 months that we've always had plenty of trucks.
Yep.
We've had a lot of capacity in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Capacity has been held artificially tight by a lot of the supply chain disruptions. Thankfully, we haven't been able to get trucks out of factories. This has been one of the more amazing stories. Imagine if we had a 18 to 19 repeat, 18 record high rates back in that time. Record numbers of new truck trailer orders followed in the last part of 2018 over capacity in 19. Well, imagine if we'd actually been able to get all of these new trucks out of the factories this year. Imagine
It would
how bad
be
the market would get.
Armageddon. It would be Armageddon. There'd be insane amount. I mean, you would hope, though, Dean, that people would learn. Wouldn't you? Like, you'd hope that companies would learn from 2018 into 19 and say, guys, let's as much as it's go.
Yeah, it's a fragmented industry though. Like this is what the deregulated market looks like. It's a very fragmented industry of very small carriers who don't stick together. Like, so on the high end, you've got the American Trucking Associations. A lot of the large carriers are a very cohesive unit. They have very good policy. They have very good messaging. On the other end of the scale, you've got the small carrier groups like OOIDA, who does a fabulous job at advocating for the small carrier. But unfortunately, the majority of carriers don't stick well together. They're not part of industry associations as much as we'd like. And that's what a free market does. They can haul freight for whatever they want, wherever they want, because they now have so much digital technology at their disposal. They can see market rates at an instant, and it makes it very easy for them to make these transactional decisions. Unfortunately, we're going to see, I think there's a few things that will happen. You'll see capacity loosen rapidly, so there'll be plenty of options for you folks that are buying capacity. It looks like rates are plummeting again this week, so we haven't seen the bottom, I don't think. But remember, at some point, even though rates are coming down, at some point they bottom out, typically in April. So remember, rates coming down in Q1 aren't abnormal, as we covered last week. They do bottom out. We don't know when that'll be though. So
But
one of the reasons
when you're talking 55 cents a mile, that's
55 cents down
that's a
year to date.
massive drop. Normally we're not that high in
So
Q1. Like
on last week's show, we said it was 22 cents a mile is the average drop in the first quarter. This time it's about double that.
Yeah, you see,
so we're coming down from a much higher level.
100%. And here's kind of, we were talking about this quickly before we went live. For all salespeople out there and everybody that believes in this relationship piece, there's more than just losing the freight. Because if you as a broker, if your customer decides to go to the spot market and maybe, like we've had a couple of clients this week call and say, I've been cut out. Like they just dropped me. And it's like, okay, so first, let's understand how the relationship sits. However, sometimes our traffic manager has 5-6 tiers above him or her that has no say in that shift sometimes. But the bigger thing, and one of the topics that we tackled with a customer of mine, is he said, Dan, I know that when things get rough and this person they gave all the business to is going to drop the ball, because that's how we got the business a year and a half ago. They dropped the ball. They're just going to do it. They've come in. They come in so low. They rate low, and then they can't get the job done. So they ask for $200 here, $100 here, and they end up getting the rates they want. But here's the bigger part: is for the last year and a half, we've developed a relationship with our suppliers. We're putting 30 trucks here, 20 trucks here, 10 trucks here every week, dedicated. They have the connecting triangle on the other end. So they're servicing customers on the other end. He goes, that's going to cause strain in our relationship, because you know what I mean? So it's this throwing a massive boulder in a very small pond. And it changes the shore, because it's not just A to B. You and I both know, Dean, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, and G is the supply chain. It probably goes all the way down to X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? And it's like everybody involved in that sequence hurts. So the customer you're sending freight to from A to B, the carrier is grabbing from C to D, that is now jeopardized. The customer that loads at C now might have to pay more, now has to find people, has to spend more time kind of retraining the new drivers. It's like, it's amazing.
But that's the difference, right? In how carriers think versus how a lot of people in the intermediary space think transactionally, one load at a time. Carriers don't think like that. Your capacity you're buying is thinking 4 and 5 loads ahead. And it ends with a very subjective, when do I need to get home Saturday for my family? So they're the sorts of things that carriers think about. But then I've been watching some of the chat coming in. It's fascinating.
Sorry, apologize, Dean.
No. But this is Cole's comments fascinating.
Jennifer, thank you. Yeah. So we got Centurion Trucking on board this morning. Good morning,
hey, Daman.
And then Cole, again, as a truck broker, I'm seeing everything you guys are talking about right now. Floor just fell out. 14 years. I've never seen it happen this fast. Right? Absolutely. Kenneth says, so many shippers are guised as the decision maker and have no power. Absolutely.
So Dan,
Jeff says, sorry, go on.
No, Jeff and Ken Carter's comments are very, very pertinent to the point I'd like to make. Fuel as a percentage of revenue. If I have a look at my chart here today, based on where fuel is this week, fuel as a percentage of revenue for small carriers is currently at 37.65%. So call it 38%. So here's the point I'd like to make, because a lot of capacity entered the spot market because rates were extraordinarily high. So I think it's worth repeating the cost structure. If you're leased onto a larger carrier, the current average rate for power only, if you're leased onto a large truckload carrier, is about $1.72 a mile. That's if you've just got your tractor. General rule of thumb is you need about 50 cents a mile to have your own authority, run a trailer, pay IFTA, pay your load board fees, all of the different fees, permits, all that. So when you add $1.72 to 50 cents a mile, you're at $2.22 per mile. That's your break even to run your own authority. So we've been above $2.22 a mile for a long time in this market. And I can tell you how long we've been above it. If I quickly go in and have a look at my chart here, I can see that $2.22 a mile, we were above $2.22 a mile for 9 months of last year, right? And
is that it?
Yeah, 9 months of last year, because we had the polar vortex hit in February, and then rates started to get above that, probably 10 months, right?
I would have thought probably since mid-2020 we've been up over $2.22 a mile.
No, so this is line haul, right? If you add fuel surcharge, gross all in rates.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I apologize.
Line haul rates.
I'm thinking all in.
Yeah. So remember, these are just line haul rates. For call it 10 months of last year, we were above 222. We were even up nearly close to 250, right? So if 222 is my break even to get my own authority, buy a trailer, all that other stuff, and be my independent contractor, you can see why so many carriers entered the market in the last 18 months. But this week, rates are at 222 on the way down. So now on the way down, I'm at the break-even point about whether I decide to keep my own independent contractor status, sell my trailer, park my truck and trailer, and go and drive a combine harvester during harvest, or go and drive for another larger carrier, or sell my entire truck and trailer, or eventually some carriers will just have to go out of business because they can't sustain the rates, because the rates are falling now below that. So we're at that inflection point in the market where we see this capacity migration, that I call it. Just like we saw a lot of carriers go from leased on owner operators to independent contractors, the reverse will start to happen. And that's why contract rates are high, because the contract rates in the big fleets in particular are very attractive right now. They're at least 30 cents a mile higher than spot. So that's why you see that. So a lot of the capacity that a lot of us use in the intermediary space, in the smaller fleet sector, will start to disappear. And that's what I think you've got to be very concerned about. If you start to drive the market down, where are you going to find the trucks eventually to move that freight? And that's my biggest concern right now, is that we'll see too much capacity leave the industry, and then you'll end up with a repeat of 2019, which is exactly what Cole just said in the comments. I'm preparing myself for another 2019 type year. But I think,
go ahead.
Let me wrap this thought up. I mean, rates are dropping, but they're now below their negative year-over-year comps. They're below where they were this time last year by about 6 cents per mile already. I think they will bottom out, but I don't think spot rates will materially increase the rest of the year. So normally between now and Independence Day, 4th of July, we see a rates increase through produce season, then they back off again. I don't know that we'll see. I think it'll just be what they call in economics a dead cat bounce. It's just like a little ripple in the trend line. It's not a very big increase in rates.
I just got that visual. I'm like, that's horrible. Why would somebody?
It's a statistical term.
I know.
It's one of the weirdest things. So rates won't increase materially, but I think they will sort of flatten out at some point. We don't know where that'll be, but I think this is a very dicey game if you're in the shipping and broking business and you're driving the rate down and buying capacity at a lower and lower rate all the time without thinking about the long-term implications. Because that capacity where do you find the trucks eventually when the market turns? We're back to where we were last year.
Yeah. And here's Dean, I would suggest to every salesperson out there right now is you have this conversation with your customer. Like what is your next step, Mr. or Mrs. Customer? Like and be truthful, be honest. Like, I've served you over X period of time. We've had fluctuations of over 55 cents per mile, 73 cents per mile over the last X number of period. and I've only, implicated or applied, a 20 cent per mile increase. So if you were in the spot market, you'd be here. And Dean, for me, I'm all about 8 miling the hell out of all of it, because I would rather find out now that I'm going to be dropped by a customer because of price so I can get ahead of the situation than just get dropped because somebody in the company or the customer has changed the mentality, and the company's come back and said, listen, we need to be profitable. We've lost because we've had customers on the show for the first time in 30 years, 2021, they lost money. Right? 30 years of profitability, and then you lose money 1 year. That's not good for shareholders if they're a public company. Like, we understand the dynamics and the economics of it. As a sales rep, when things are happening like this, like Cole, when things are happening, get down with every single customer and say, listen, this is happening. You've been here in 2019, unless you're a brand new company. You understand what it's going to be. But what is your steps here? And get ahead of that. Because if we don't, we are going to be in the 2019 position. If we can keep our loyal customers that are saying, hey, obviously I need to look for a discount, but you did do the XYZ for me. So can we work together? And at least then, like G.I. Joe, knowing is half the battle. If we go into this blind and just, for everybody watching and listening, whether it be now on the replay or on the podcast, if you do nothing with this information, then you're part of the problem.
Right.
If you do something with the information, you're part of the solution. That's my full opinion. Like me, hate me, don't care. That's the reality. You're either part of the problem, you're part of the solution in everything we do in life. So become part of that solution to help your customers achieve their goals, but understand what markets are doing. Heck, give them the URL wherever you watch this video and let them see it because it's reality. But the problem is, if we look at 2019, the amount of companies that went out of business, and some of them got bought up by other companies, companies grew because there's always going to be, people that actually get ahead and people that really struggle in raises and lowers in the economy. But it's, okay, so is all of that capacity out of the market right now? No, it's not. No. They just got consumed by other companies that had maybe lower operating costs and were able to sustain the weather, the storm, right? But I know, 2019, I was working with a couple of companies. They actually parked 40 to 50% of their fleet, let their drivers go, and brokered that freight and made more money. So they're and again, right? So that's capitalizing on that spot market to be sustainable. I have my own thoughts about it because it's adding to the problem you know what I mean? So it's like profit over everything. But if you as a corporation can't sustain a year's worth of losses, then, they got to do what they got to do. But it's that race to the bottom that's going to kill everyone. And how do we stay afloat, right? Like, how do we keep our heads above water with enough life vests? It's the same thing when the economy crashed in 2008, 2009. And Dean, I'll raise my hand. I lost a $37 million company in 2008 and 9 because I did not adopt to this philosophy.
Right.
And I was one of the people that helped drive companies out of business. And as embarrassing it is to say now, that's where my head was in 2008 and 9.
Right.
But we have the option. We have the opportunity now as sales reps. As the Yodas in the Luke Skywalker Star Wars story. You put your customer as Luke Skywalker and you just operate in the background like Yoda, making things happen. And those conversations are even more pertinent today than ever. Now, I do know you had some specific lanes because you were talking about a Canadian lane that is just like unreal right now.
Well, what caught my attention this week was the small freight market of Huntington, West Virginia. And Huntington, West Virginia ships a lot of chemicals, pharmaceuticals, steel, and it lists Canada as its largest trading partner. And so I dug into that market and said, okay, what's happening in the Huntington market? So it's 600 miles from Huntington, West Virginia, up to Toronto. So I'll quote you all-in rates because I have the contract rates. So contract rates on that lane are at 327. So they're up probably 50 cents a mile in the last year over year. So rates have been going up generally, no surprise there. But to tell you how tight capacity is on that lane and why it's a big concern for people that have bought capacity on that lane at a lower rate, spot rates are at $5.53 today. So that's $5.53 per mile. So we're at five. Let me just call that 553 minus contract rates are 327. So it's $2.26 per mile higher than contract rates on that lane. So if you're a carrier, of course, that'd be a great lane, but you've got to go cross border, then you've got to get freight back. So there's something still going on, Dan, on the cross border side of the equation, even further south on what we termed Auto Alley. We talked about Laredo to Toronto. Spot rates are at 386 after averaging $170 all of last year.
And Dean, here is where an understanding as a sales rep, an understanding of the market, because if you have customers in that area, guess what they're hearing? Oh, rates are dropping across the board all over the US and Canada. And they're like, whoa, hold on. How come my rates are going up?
Yeah.
Right
well,
now, you have that juxtaposition that they don't get. They don't understand. Look who joined us here. We got Smiles. There we go. We're going to see the teeth today.
I've been bumped
How's
from
it going,
DJ.
DJ?
Hi, DJ.
I am so sorry, guys. So
it's all good, brother. It's all good. You had an appointment. No big deal.
I had an appointment.
So yeah, you have the market that you went from $3 to over $5, and on another market they've dropped.
Right.
And
about to get worse though, Dan, because the truckies, that's an Australian term. Good Lord, how did I get that? Truckers are protesting and blockading the southern borders across all the main bridges between Mexico, because apparently there's an election this year. So Governor Abbott's decided to inspect every single truck for drugs and immigrants. I guess this is a new caravan that's apparently impacting the country. So the border's now choked up. So that means the flow of freight cross-border, both directions, has been choked up all week. So we're about to see another hit in spot rates on all of those lanes coming out of the southern border in particular. Keep an eye on that one.
Gosh.
So yes, so Dan, the blockades in Canada in February are still having ripple effects on capacity and spot rates. Even though spot rates are dropping nationally, I think this is an important message for all the listeners. Even though spot rates are dropping nationally as a national average, there are still markets where it's the exact opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. And understanding those markets, learning those markets, understanding why those markets are happening as a professional sales rep, I think it's mandatory these days. We've got, Cole says communication is key. So he says, I'm preparing for another 219, communication key. Jeff hits it right on the head. Collaboration, folks. Sales is all about this, period.
One team, one goal. One team, one goal.
Yeah, exactly, DJ. Cole says, love the opinion, Dan, of sitting down with your clients. And Jeff, he says, be carrier friendly and educate your customers why this is so important. This is the big thing is for years, for decades, I'm almost 30 years in this industry. And Jeff will tell you as well, because Jeff's a little bit longer than me. Well, no, I won't go there, brother.
Stop it.
I know. Jeff's been in the industry. Like you saw my eyes go, right? I pulled a Chris Rock at the Oscars. Do I want to say something? So sorry, brother Jeff, I love you, man. But it's, we look at it, and for decades, we've held all these secrets so close to our chest.
Right.
And it's like, if we don't tell our customers about this, we can make more money. If we don't, now, blow that shit out of the water, man. Out of the water. Yesterday I sat down with a customer of mine and I said, listen, here's the deal. This is exactly what we have. I laid out 27 different lanes. Dean, I was telling you about this before we started. I said, I laid out 27 different lanes. Your rate's here, my rate's here. This is my cost. In order to operate, I need 12%. My minimum margin is 12%. Does this work? He says, well, there's fuel in there. I said, no. So we sat down for 2.5 hours and went back and forth on 21 different lanes. 2.5 hours with the customer. And I'm going, okay, market in this area is doing this. Market in this area is doing this. This is what I think is happening here. In the end, we just got awarded all the business today. The emails are flying back and forth. I hear my inbox going ding, ding, ding as I'm speaking. And it's because I sat down, I educated. I said, listen, we are never going to get to this point. If you want to keep your incumbent on there, they're going to continue to have the service failures. How do you want to do it? No, change it. So he took an increase, but we flatlined it.
Yeah.
We said, okay, here's kind of what it is. And we set rules and regulations. We set rules and mandates up on the baseline of it to say, okay, these 40 loads a week, here's the rules. Fuel goes to this. This is when we adjust. Fuel goes up. This is when we adjust. So we have like buffer zones where it's simple. And the deal was, I put this together for you. you need to communicate to tell me what's going on. Like in 2 weeks, if something happens in the spot market, you need to allow me time to adjust as opposed to just pulling the freight out from underneath me, because I won't do it.
Right.
And that was a conversation I had up front. Was I worried about maybe losing 40 loads a week? Yes. But am I even more worried about solidifying suppliers, building those relationships, having my assets in place? Because I'm not moving. I'm not strapping the truckload to my back and running up and down the road. It's not happening. I know that. I'm very clear on that. But I build these relationships, and then they get like implode because of somebody making a decision higher up. And it took, like I said, 2.5 something hours. This has been going on for months, and the deal finally closed. Am I excited about it? Sure.
Right.
But did it come with a lot of red tape? Because I implemented red tape on my customer side.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair in today's market. And for all you sales, sorry, go on, Dean.
Yeah. No, Dan, Jeff made a comment about be carrier friendly, and I think this gets to one of my economic business investment strategies in life, and that is always leave something in there for the next guy. Right, you can't time market cycles at the peak and bottom to try and maximize your margin and expect this to work out longer term. It doesn't always work out that way. You've got to leave something in it for the next guy so that it has some value for them to be part of the transaction. If you're just going to go into this margin expansion game when capacity loosens and rates plummet, eventually it's going to work against you. It won't work all the time. And if you leave a little bit in for the next guy, whether it be the shipper, yourself as the intermediary looking for a decent margin, and the carrier, that's why you've got to be carrier friendly, because that asset's going to move the freight at the end of the day. And right now their profitability is going through the floor. They are really hurting. And if you play the margin expansion game to its max, you'll just drive capacity out of the industry, and then you're back to square one eventually.
Yeah. And if this person gives you great service, why would you want to put them out of business? And in the end, that's what you're talking about.
Yep.
I want more margin. I want more margin at the risk of losing a supplier that like is good to you. That's crazy. That's like getting married and your wife or husband is awesome to you, and you just treat them like garbage every day. It doesn't make sense. Why would you do it? And it's
DJ? Go DJ.
Hey, you want me to say something?
I thought you were going to say something. You were trying to.
I was just going to say, Dan. I mean, Dan brought up a great point that really it hit me, because I used to feel like what Dan mentioned, where keeping secrets from everybody else was at the brokerage houses, but I seen it on the other end too. I seen where brokers that I was working with would almost like hold back secrets. Like, I can't tell my customer this because if I do, like they're going to know. And then all of a sudden they're just leaving me. Well, if you feel like your customer's going to leave you, you didn't build a relationship. You have no relationship. You're just transactional. And that's, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I didn't.
Yeah. Well, Nerfad brings up an even bigger point than that. You look at the carrier end. Right? Build a relationship is where I think should come out with a lot of, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I don't think relationship should be fake or a one-way street where the broker and carrier respectively is on. So here's the flip side of that, Nerfad, and we've all faced it. You go to create, as a broker, you go to create a relationship with a carrier. What's the first thought? Oh, market's high. You want to create a relationship. When market drops, you're going to drop me. That's the perspective. Same thing when a carrier comes to try and create a relationship with a broker. Yeah. Oh, you need freight now. When I asked you 3 months ago when business was booming, you had no time for me. Now you have time for me.
Right.
So this is, and I see it. Sorry, I shouldn't say I see it. In speaking with U.S. agents, they say more about that than the Canadian transborder agent. Right. The U.S. Canada kind of guy. And I don't know if it's U.S. Carriers are decidedly just, I've got my market and that's it. I don't know what that is. If you're out there, please share with us. We'd love to hear. But Nerfad hit it on the head where it's like, bring it out. Scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Yes. Is this the case? Yes. Do we 8 Mile it? 100%. Hey, listen, I know you've probably had brokers in the past say this, and this. This is what I'm looking to do. This is a long-term goal. This is the driver-centric sale that I'm trying to make. This is what I'd like to do. This is how I'd like to operate, and go through it. And if that supplier doesn't want to, then move on to the next one. But you will find somebody that's looking to not be in the position they're in right now, where it's up and down. Like, how can you ever create a business plan for annual profit or anything with like this, 95% less profit in that period of time. Like, how do you prepare for that, Dean?
Predictability is key. I mean, that's why we have budgets and plans and forecasts. If you don't
that's
have
why we got Dean, the data master.
Yeah. Well, there's a story unfolding right now.
All right. So, DJ, here's the question. I know you just got with us.
Yeah.
Do we already have a quote to pull us out? Because I had one prepared.
Of course.
Okay. All right.
I do.
Dean, is there anything else that we didn't address that you wanted to address today? Because I know we got off the highway quite a bit on some rants here, but that's
no, not at all. No, it was a great show. I did kind of hear, and obviously, anytime we have Dean on, I mean, the information you give us all, Dean, is unbelievable. So
thank
you for what you do.
The next week. Okay.
But again, hey, thank you guys. Thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Dean, as always, the mad scientist of logistics data. And my sales Yoda, I see he's got his shirt on. Thank you for taking control today. Thank you to Daman, American Logistics, Centurion Trucking. Thank you to everybody for joining us every day. Hopefully, we're giving you everything you're giving us as far as motivation and just good vibes. Here's my quote to take us out today. It's a Winston Churchill quote: "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." Let's keep going, guys.
Good one. Go get him.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversation,